said talk to me, damn it, or else I'm gonna throw you in the fire!
You stupid bitch! You filthy... Flyover State of Fear.
Welcome back to Flyover State of Fear. You just heard his music. I have the distinct pleasure of the composer of Flyover State of Fear and film, Barry J. Neely, joining us. How you doing, Barry?
Hey, good to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So Barry, if for those listening, years ago reached out. We've known each other on the internet for a while through Twitter and whatnot. And he did this sound you actually just heard, but even more exciting than that, you just composed music for the film Shudder original Slapface.
Yes, yes, and this was a big one for me.
Yeah,
yeah. Feature films are the goal to score for film composers, and I was so excited to be brought onto this one, especially because of the response it's getting.
Yeah, it's a good movie. We'll start off beforehand, but it sounds awesome too. Like your score is distinct. But how are you doing before we even get into the Slapface and conversation? How's everything going?
It's going well. Sunny and bright here in California.
Nice. It's cold and rainy in New Jersey. So
I'm an East Coast guy. I'm Boston, born and raised in Boston.
Okay.
So I'm actually used to that. I'm kind of actually I'd rather have it be cloudy and rainy. But I do like to bike, and you can bike in sun and
any
to bike in rain.
weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just had like a nice warm patch. And the last like 2 days, it kind of brought us back to reality. We're like, nah, it's cold.
No, you live in Jersey. Yeah.
Yeah. We it's St. Patrick's Day time. It was on a float on Saturday, and I'm sure it's warm by the time this recording's out. But
you were on a float?
I was on a float.
Oh, okay.
Friends own a bar, and we were on there, and thankfully it was like a nice 55 degrees, sunny was out, so like you just need it to like lighter.
But wait, that sounds like you were like filming a parade, and then you're going to air it later on St. Patty's Day or something like that. Like, why was the float now?
Oh no, I meant like by the time this episode releases.
No, I know, but you said you're anyways. Okay.
Oh yeah, we're film. No, didn't film it. That's already happened.
So the St. Patty's Day parade was the other day?
There's St. Patrick's Day parades every weekend, at least in New Jersey. Like there's literally one every weekend.
I'm from Boston,
of March.
and I only know of the one.
Oh yeah, every town divvies them up where we go. Like first weekend of March it's something. This weekend there's another one I could go down the shore to. Then I'm sure there's one after St. Patrick's Day, but I only went to the one. Anyway. So this is I am drinking Guinness today, which is the funny part about it. But
I'm wearing green.
Yeah, so we're on theme. It's gonna come out way after this, but so Barry, for any new listeners, I do ask, what is your horror origin story? And that really can be answered any way you want. You can be telling me about how you don't like horror movies because
I'm worried I'm going to go on too many tangents, and this is why.
Perfect.
Because I could tell you that I'm not a horror fan, and then I could list 1,000 horror movies that I've seen and enjoyed. Sure. And I think maybe that's because I'm a metal fan. I love heavy metal. I love my Anthrax, my Megadeth, Dream Theater, Prague. But I don't wear metal shirts and I don't do that.
Yeah.
So horror, maybe I consider that the same realm where it's I don't, I just wear jeans and a t-shirt every day. I don't show horror. But then, I guess my horror origin story was, always being in not even Blockbuster Video. Even before that, I just dated myself, which I'm probably gonna do a couple times. But just going to
video.
The local town video store, and going and just checking out the backs of the VHS boxes, and just being so fascinated. I remember House, which I think House is one of those things you see the cover of it, and you're like, and then you flip it over and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
what's actually going on in this movie? Now, I never saw the house, but like I would go and stay up late night, and I remember watching The Howling
Yeah.
when my parents were gone. Like they didn't know or care. But I would have to say that my real horror origin story is my childhood friend Zach Benoit, the kid who he always made you swim in places you didn't want to swim because they were gross, but at the same time you were happy you did.
Yeah.
And he always had Showtime on, and we would always watch it late at night on sleepovers.
Uh-huh.
And I just remember I never didn't go to his house to sleep over, but I was scared every time I slept over because he had on like Freddy's Nightmares, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that's making a comeback right now because they just put it back out on something called Screambox for any. So
oh,
Freddy's Nightmares is kind of back in the zeitgeist. It's funny you
see, I'm
mentioned
gonna
that.
have to rewatch what I watched then because there was also a Disney movie called Bride of Boogedy or something like that.
Oh, I've seen that
Yeah,
pop up on Disney Plus. Like it's one of those thumbnails you see on Disney Plus
and
still.
it's one of those childhood movies I saw just randomly one day,
Mm.
and it scared the crap out of me. And I could go back and watch it and be like, this is dumb. Why would this scare me? But that when you're a kid, you don't have a say in what scares you, you know?
No.
So
And
yeah.
oh, I say it's funny you mentioned those things, and plus with the video covers, I know I was a kid that did that. Um, I wasn't even watching them too. It was like running past and like,
Mm,
oh, I'm gonna go down the horror aisle and like
yeah,
in a weird way like romanticize or like imagine what those things are about. Like the
yeah,
one that stands out to me is not House, but it's always Dead Alive. The iconic Dead Alive cover where the mouth is
yes.
ripping open the face,
Yep, yep, yep.
or the mouth has the eyeball in it or something. Anyway,
I thought it was a full
all those
skeleton head, but
covers, I feel like you said the backs, but really all those covers like make up such a different story of what they were.
well, I think House is the best example of that because
Yeah,
it's actually kind of a comedy.
it is. I saw
Yeah.
House a couple years ago for the first time.
Mm.
It didn't like some of those like horror comedies, especially of the time. I think you have to grow up with it. It didn't hit for me,
No, no, no.
but that cover's still floating around, and it's so interesting. It's such an engaging cover.
Yes, yeah, and Troll, of course, was always the one that was fascinating, but then you watch it and
Oh
you're
yeah, there's
taken back.
the
And then
Troll and Troll Two.
well, Troll 2 is a great example of another movie that scared the hell out of me. And I'll say this because okay. Because I it's not it's not a well-produced horror movie,
Hmm.
which scares me even more. Because if they're well produced, you can kind of you take yourself
Feels
out of the action. But if it felt like almost like I was watching a home movie in a sense.
which movie?
Troll 2, Troll
Oh,
2.
Troll 2. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's weird. I have I just showed Barry for those listening a sticker I have of Troll 2 that I recently got for my birthday. And I I'm like a fan of like the cult status of Troll 2 for
Mhm,
that, but
mhm.
I do have a childhood memory of it. I remember my brother and his friends renting it, and my brother's 4 years older than me. And for years, I thought, there was this scene with this green stuff and these pictures on the wall,
Yep.
like the bedroom scene. And I kind of didn't realize what that movie was. Like, it was
Mm,
just like a flash memory I had
yeah.
until I was watching like Reels channel at the time, and they were promoting the documentary for Troll 2,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Best Worst Movie. And if you're listening, watch that doc. It's really
I
good.
actually need to watch that doc. I haven't watched it
Yeah,
yet.
seek it out. Best Worst Movie. It's a really good documentary about like cult films, but also like people's lives, and it's very endearing. Um, but anyway, so it's funny you mentioned that being a
Mm,
memory of yours because for years I scratched my brain what it was, and I don't remember if my brother he doesn't remember that movie, but I remember them being like, "Oh, this is scary," and then
yeah.
finding out it's like
Well,
one of the biggest trashes to ever be put on
well, that's
screen.
the thing. I don't remember it anything other than this was a movie that I watched once, and it was so weird and odd that it scared me. And then
Yeah.
I never watched it again, and I never thought about it again, like you said. So, and to me, it's a flash. But when I think about it, I think, I was scared at the time.
Hmm.
You know. Um,
Yeah,
mm,
and it always happens too. I mean, like at least for me, like those late night movies are the ones you catch at like sleepovers. I mean, you're sounds weird. That's why I like this question of the origin story because it all
mm,
kind of makes sense. And like some people's origin story could start, when they're 20 something, and but not most are from a kid, and it's usually things you pick up and that I love hearing about the stories of like, I'll just use Blockbuster as the general term of
Yeah.
video store Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Or like she said, Showtime late night. Yeah.
Showtime. Sorry, I need to mention Showtime
Mhm.
because I remember years and years later, like when I was in my 20s, I was staying at a friend's place for a while, and they of course always watched Dexter.
Mm.
And I always remember saying to her, "Hey, yeah, I don't actually watch Showtime because every time I watch Showtime, there's something really creepy on, and it creeps me out. So I stopped watching it." And she's like, "That's not true. That's not true." Despite the fact that they're watching Dexter. And then this movie called Before the Devil Knows You're Dead is
Yes.
on, and it has not John C. Riley, but what's his name?
I
His
gotta look it
buddy.
up. I just know the name of the movie. It's very
I,
like bleak.
it's
It's very heavy
super
movie.
it's super bleak and it's super heavy and it's exactly what I remember Showtime and
Philip
how
Seymour Hoffman.
Dustin Hoffman. Oh, no, not Dustin Hoffman. Philip Seymour Hoffman's, yeah.
Yeah.
And it is exactly what I remember Showtime being, which was always scaring me because it's like he, he just puts a pillow over a guy's head and shoots him in the head, and you're like, it was so raw and freaky that I was like, this is what, and it's not that. Well, I mean, we shouldn't any of us shouldn't be able to handle that, you know. But at the
No.
same time, I was like, "Oh, I'm never watching Showtime again because it always surprises me. It always creeps up on me and then scares me, you know."
I understand that.
Yeah.
It you know it, we, I'm always happy we're in the age of streaming. Even though I host a horror show, I still things still creep me out, right?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
um, and I love that. It's funny you mentioned just things like that. It's like falling asleep with the TV on is like dangerous if you scare easily because you might fall asleep to Psych or something, or like a light show, and then wake up and Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, or
Yes.
Slapface or something is on TV, or even a trailer. Trailers, it could be the worst movie in the world. It could be a terrifying horror
Mhm.
trailer, and you could wake up to it. It happened to me a few times especially in college. I don't have cable anymore, so it doesn't really happen unless like sometimes they'll sneak in like a trailer for like Mama or a more newer
Uh,
one or Hereditary or something on Tubi live TV or one of those like
yep.
or Shudder. I don't really watch the Shudder live. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting that that's your relationship with Showtime, where at the end of the day, it's just a network that has a gathering of movies that are all the same as
I
like
know.
HBO. Um, and then compared to at the times though, HBO had Tales of the Crypt, though, of that
Which I
era.
also watched. I
Yeah.
kind of wish you know how people are like some people's stories are. My parents always told me I couldn't watch these things. I kind of wish my parents told me not to watch them because I remember, and I think I mentioned this when in writing to you initially was yeah, it's like that the one episode where the guy's kind of a shock jock for on camera, has a trashy TV show, and he goes in this horror film, and sorry, into this horror house, this
Hmm.
murder house. And the scariest thing I remember as a kid was when he was still on camera, and the network is talking to him through his earpiece, and he's like, "The cameraman's dead. The cameraman's dead." And the anchor in the newsroom far away goes, "Well, who's holding the camera?"
Oh, that's so good.
And I'm just like, that
I
still shocks me.
I have all those tales. I have them
Yeah.
all. I gotta find that
The
episode.
one where he can't fit his this guy has his nephew come and he doesn't like his nephew and as his nephew dies so but he can't fit him in a coffin so he saws his legs off and then his nephew raises from the dead with no legs and comes and kills him and you're like,
It's great.
why did I
It
watch that as a kid?
there's so many. I've been recently bringing up talking to people how I watched
Mhm.
not I watched a bunch of stuff as a kid and things scared me in the Cradle,
Oh
Rebecca
yeah,
De Mornay,
yeah, remember.
and I like remember my dad being like, "It's creepy." Watching it, maybe I was 8. I say 8 to 11 because I can't really remember, but I remember it. I remember like the breastfeeding feeding scene that was creepy, but that's
Yeah.
it. That's really where like my memory ended of it being like, "That's creepy. A good movie." I recently picked it up, watched it, and literally like 3 weeks ago, and I was like, "This is like, how did I watch this?"
How'd you
Not
manage to
because
watch it?
I think because maybe as an adult I understand it more, and I was like, "This is this poor." I just kept saying this poor woman through that whole fucking movie because like
Uh-uh.
it's a lot of sexual trauma and all this stuff. And anyway, so yeah, what we're allowed to watch as kids like makes me like recently like you have the you know parents freak out everything of the Batman stuff, right? And I know no spoilers or anything, but
I only watched that
I just
trailer a year and a half ago, and that's all I
I just
watched.
mean in the vagity of it, the darkness of everything, and
Yes,
it's
yeah, yeah.
like in my mind, I'm like, kids are gonna find the same thing. Fuck, I saw a clip today on Twitter sharing around where there was a junior movie critic on like one of those '90s talk shows talking about how Batman Returns is too scary for children.
Batman Returns
Oh, it's
was pretty
creepy.
terrifying. Yeah.
But my point of
Yeah.
bringing it up
Yes.
is
Yes.
it's
Yes. Yes.
relevant right now. Is I think that stuff's always going to be there, and kids are going to find it, or they're not,
Yeah.
and they're going to figure it out.
The only movie I regret watching because I had 4 or 5 sleepless nights with Candyman.
Oh, I
Um,
love
but
Candyman.
that's because I had actually visited Chicago and was at Cabrini Green
Ooh,
a week
why?
before I saw the movie. It was a youth group in high school. We
Okay,
went and we like
that's
it's. I
terrifying.
mean to be yeah, and we tried to like paint some of the Cabrini Green walls and like it was a
You were doing
meaningless
trying to do
gesture,
good.
but I was a
Yeah,
kid, so I didn't know it was a meaningless
sure.
gesture. And then they tear them down like a few years later. But that's I don't I think that connection is what scared me the most is that I had seen it
Hmm.
and now let's be honest, I'm sure people's lives in Cabrini Green were terrifying to begin with on a lot of other different levels, but
Yeah.
Candyman, there was that connection there.
Oh no, I
Yeah.
love that movie, but that would absolutely terrify me. That movie, I love it, but it my biggest like still to this day creeps me out. As I've said it multiple times on this show. I have like a deep rooted childhood fear of Bloody Marys, so something like Candyman
Oh.
just sits poorly with. Love the movie. I watch it. I can watch it now as like comfort, but like things like that whole thing, no, thank you.
I
Um,
made the mistake of thinking that if I said Candyman in the mirror 3 times or 5 times
I think in Candyman it's 5.
5. If I made the mistake of if I say it and he doesn't come, then I'm okay.
Oh yeah.
But then I said it 5 times and then I was scared the rest of the night. Like and it's not and I was old. I'm always old enough to know it's not real, but it doesn't
Sure.
matter.
Oh.
It's like I know that if I swim across a lake, a shark is not going to come up and eat me in a freshwater lake. But
Mhm.
because of Jaws and because of when I saw it, my brain, my logic knows, but my heart doesn't know. So
Yeah.
it always pictures that shark coming up. So
There's
it
a
worries me.
reason. There's a reason why I don't enter a room before I can't hit the light on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right.
And
So
and had we not watched these movies, would we not do that? But shouldn't we have that sense of fear a
I
little
think it's
bit in
innate.
general?
I think it's
Protection?
innate. I think that's why things like scary movies and something like Slapface and things work.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a just a deep nurtured thing to not enjoy the scary. Like I've said a billion times, like my wife cannot stand scary movies or
Mm.
anything like that. So oddly, it makes this sometimes challenging to watch things and not, but it's
Uh-huh.
very easy. But
Zara, by the way, my partner, she is a bigger movie fan than I am, but our thing is true crime. For some
yeah,
reason, like actual murder and
it's
like
so popular.
it's so popular, and I think we're all genuinely fascinated by it. Maybe for our own protection, but it's like, we won't watch a horror movie, but we'll listen to somebody actually getting murdered, and then I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't have that deep thing of true crime. She, like I said, she doesn't have any of it, so it is, and we've watched a couple of the specials. But the only time true crime got up to me was we listened to this podcast on the way to away for a weekend, and the guy driving was like put on one of his podcasts about missing people, and by the time we actually got to our Airbnb, it's kind of like, oh man, this so and so's like he. What if we see him this weekend?
Uh huh.
I
Uh
for
huh.
like so anyway, no, that's great encapsulation because I definitely could tell, and I forget the words you use, but you kind of have like a voyeuristic view of horror, right?
A little
Like,
bit.
and I think that's great. Like, I don't I have the show, and my room's decorated with spooky things and like slashers, but majority of the week I'm watching comedies or like recently I've been diving into dramas that I haven't seen in years, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think there's a formula or a uniform for a true fan,
No,
and maybe that's why I'm like maybe I am a true fan
I
after
think.
all. Yeah.
Are there any before we move on to Slapface? Just because you said, is there any like one movie that does stand out that you really enjoy that we would call horror? And I on this show at least, I like to blend the line between thriller and horror. Like I'm not too bogged down on genre conventions of what things are.
Yeah, I get. I always say, okay, not to. I'm not trying to bring up politics here, but I'm a lifelong Democrat. But I find, what was that movie about Joe Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, back in the
Oh,
day with John,
oh,
you know, not Quinnipiac or whatever.
oh, I might not have seen it then, but oh,
I guess my point is a lot of the movies that I like,
Quinnipiac, yeah, the
Quinnipiac.
Ted Kennedy, Quinnipiac, yeah,
If you watch John, he played John Connor in that one movie.
Jason Clarke.
Jason
I
Clarke.
pulled it up.
If you
Yeah.
watch Jason Clarke's, by the way, I'm never gonna remember names, even though I've seen the movie.
Jim Gaffigan, Ed Helms. This
Jason
cast
Clarke,
is
if you
interesting.
watch Jason Clarke's performance in that, it is horrifying.
Mhm.
The story is horrifying, but it's not a horror movie. And so it's like when I get interviewed because of Slapface, I get interviewed by asking about my favorite horror movies, and I'm just like, you know what? I find those movies kind of horrifying.
Yeah,
Like Children of Men wasn't a horror movie, but it was so dark and creepy and like
I would
uh,
accept Children. If someone picked Children of Men to come on this show, I would accept it.
okay,
Put
yeah,
it
yeah.
that way,
And
right?
that's
Like,
that's easily one of my favorite movies.
uh,
Just because of the rawness of it.
mhm.
I mean, I
Well,
think
it's a horror movie, not in by any means, but my example of using that, like even the just scary scenes in movies of wow, it is really like not silly to say, but like something like the movie a couple years ago that came out, Eighth Grade, the Bo Burnham
okay.
director or debut, right? Not a horror movie, coming of age scene. There's a scene of that movie that's scarier than
Mm.
any horror movie that's come out in the last
This is
five
with the
years.
little girl. She
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I
There's
think
a
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
yeah. There's that scene with the boy that's literally filmed very tense, very
yeah.
and so it's what we define it. Like I wouldn't accept Eighth Grade on this show
Yes,
because of one
yeah.
scene, but so no, that's definitely cool. Like I know like I
Oh,
keep saying myself.
yeah, please,
Oh,
please, please.
oh, I say,
One came to mind, so but
oh no,
please.
please say what's the one that came to
Well,
mind?
I mean, Monster Squad.
Oh, so much fun.
I mean, I that is that a horror movie? I think it has to
It's in
be.
the it spooks.
And
Um,
I loved it. And it was that. Speaking of that, that was at a sleepover. That was like, could we watch it again? And nobody was excited to watch it again. I was like, I want to watch this movie
yeah,
over and over again.
no, the spook. I'm a big proponent of like YA horror or like
Mm,
kids being scary and doing things, and it's actually a good segue into I think Slapface.
great.
Because some parts of Slapface, by the way, anyone listening, there's spoilers. We're just gonna be talking as normal. If you've listened to the show, we're talking about the full movie, and I'm gonna say spoilers once.
Hmm.
We're talking about Slapface. Barry composed the movie as mentioned, uh, and it's directed by Jeremiah Kipp. And I like to read. I have not. I always blindly pull the description of the synopsis that you get when you Google it.
Hmm.
Let's see if it is accurate to what the
Okay.
movie is
Okay.
or
Okay.
not. 'Cause sometimes they are wildly off.
All right.
A boy deals with the loss of his mother by creating a dangerous relationship with a monster rumored to live in the woods.
Hmm.
That is actually it's one sentence. Pretty
Okay.
good description.
That's pretty good description.
It tells you much. So, I guess like I said, it's a little different. We've talked before. A little new grounds for this show, I mean, because our involvement. So, but why I said it's like, watching this for the most part reminded me. So this movie's extremely bleak. Uh, but having said that, it reminded me a lot of because it is a bit of a folklore. It reminded me a lot of these YA shows like Goosebumps, Are You for the Dark, Monsters,
Hmm.
maybe not Monster Squad, but things like that. These stories around kids, just with obviously that R-rated lens, and it's pulls no punches. But there were
Almost
scenes in it.
like a Super 8, but with
Yeah,
but even darker.
yeah.
Like child stories.
I wrote it down at one point. I said this really reminds me, and I love child stories like that. I think also too like the witch design, which was excellent in it.
Yeah.
I think helped having that bit of like kid like mysticism to it. You
Yeah,
know,
they didn't. You always talk about Jaws as being the quintessential example of how to sneak in the
Mhm.
monster, but Slapface doesn't really hide the monster.
but
Eh,
it It did. And what I mean is, it was lit or unlit. It was they hid her
True,
in the
they did keep
shadows.
the face was in
So
shadows. Yeah.
so like I never had time to like. And I hope this is coming out rude. Critique the look of her.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, like her face. Like soon as you kind of saw it, there was a scene where she jumped at Anna.
Mhm.
I'm jumping around here,
No,
obviously,
please.
but like
But
that stood out to me.
That's the first
Yeah,
one of
and
the first attacks.
I was able to obviously him very well, I'm sure, the director, but I listened to some of his interviews, Jeremiah Kipp, and he did say I thought it was interesting. Now he said he has written it into his contracts to not do this.
Oh,
The makeup artist didn't want to do test like before principal photography. He didn't want to do test
okay.
makeups with it. So he didn't know how it was lit, and apparently they had an issue the first day of filming with the makeup because the makeup artist basically, I'm obviously putting words in his mouth, but like refused to do screen tests before they filmed.
Interesting. Which almost an indie film I can kind of understand only because sometimes that takes a whole day of shooting and you have to
Oh,
hire a crew for the day. So even budgetary wise, it might restrict them. Yeah.
whoever was the
But
makeup effects,
but
he
that
mentioned
that
in an interview,
but
and
that is
that's
yeah that's a
interesting.
difficulty. I mean, yeah, how do you know? And especially because we all I saw a rough cut of the film and there were way more witch stuff in it, like
Sure.
obvious witch stuff. And my first thought was, well, I hope they get rid of that, because
Yeah.
it reveals too much. And that's of course rough cuts don't, rough
So
cuts can mean anything.
no, I have a question about that because
Yeah.
like so my only knowledge of how composing works,
Mm.
uh, or should say like professionally, like is the small scenes from Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Oh yeah.
Meaning
Yeah.
like the way it's set up, and could you just kind of like walk me through like by the way, your score is absolutely is the glue I think that holds this movie
Oh,
together.
well, thanks. Thank you.
Because you really get this sense of like so the movie's bleak, but you get this sense of dread and tension all throughout the movie that I think in some scenes, especially in a lot of scenes, if the score was different, it would not fall apart because it's a good movie, but it would just have a different effect.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, thank you. I mean, that was uh, partially through extensive conversations with Jeremiah. Let me say for the record, I've never met Jeremiah in person.
Okay.
This is a New York-based crew,
Mhm.
and I'm primarily LA-based for now. So it was only conversations, but like, first of all, let me just say that within the first two conversations, I was like, I want to work with this director for a long time. He was
I
so
hope you get to work together again.
well. He was just so he you speaking of if you're saying you're not really familiar with how scoring works, it's like sometimes the director might want a very specific idea, and Jeremiah just made it so from the get-go I would be able to write the score that I wanted to write
Cool.
because he was like, I already like your work.
Yeah.
And just hearing that, you're like, okay, that means he's listened to stuff from my past. That means he knows I can do the job. There's no worry there.
Hmm.
Because first of all, I mean, just to get into it, film scoring is an extremely competitive
Oh,
medium,
I could imagine.
and so you have to. There's always somebody else who could probably do it. There's always somebody else who
That's
could do
how I feel about graphic design.
it. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I'm comfortable in the job I'm at, but I understand the.
Yeah.
If I was a freelance graphic designer, I think I would have gray hairs by
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, yeah, I wrongfully assume I'm always going to get fired from a job just because, honestly, you want to also make the film work. So if what you're coming up with doesn't make the film work, then you should be replaced. You know?
now. Okay.
Uh, um, so so what Jeremiah did was he provided me with that feeling of he has the confidence that I'm going to make something that works. And especially in my conversations with directors, my main goal is to have them know that they don't have to know music to help me write the music for it.
Hmm.
And on top of that, I'm gonna give you a lot, and then you can help me pare it down to what it needs.
That's how you got to do. I feel like everything in a creative field,
Yeah.
right? Like we can work backwards. It's like when you listen to the script writers and like we wrote it R-rated and we told it down to be PG,
Yeah.
right? Or
Yes.
like same
Yes. Yeah.
concept.
Yeah. Same concept, because you want to give the director the tools to work with. Now, I've had it's easier when it's non-pandemic, where I can meet with the director and
Sure.
I can show him, because I did a score a few years ago where the director wasn't sure about the score, and I was like, just come over, and I showed him the layers, and he was like, oh yeah, can we get rid of that and that? I'm like, yes.
Sure.
It wasn't like, can you get rid of the main piano line playing the main theme? It wasn't like that,
Well,
but
that's even.
it was like this one little sound really bothered me, and I'm like, oh, I can take that
It's
out.
it's so funny, man, because I'm just seeing the parallels of like what I do for a living. Also, of like, it's so much easier to have someone over my shoulder and move things out that
Yes,
they don't
but you
like,
have to
then
get
back
there
and forth.
first, though. You have to get there,
Yeah.
and then bring them in, because obviously I also want the director to have a positive experience of the art that they're creating.
Hmm.
And so I want them to feel like, even if they don't know music, that they're part of the process. That seems
I
obvious, but you have to invite them to be like, you
sure.
don't have to know about music. Just tell me everything. I'll write it down.
Well, they're your client.
You're my client.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Well,
yeah.
he has. I just like, so I listened to a couple interviews of him today, and he's only had nothing but great things to say about you. Because in both interviews I listened to, your score was brought up. I
Mm.
feel like both times unprompted.
Awesome.
So
Okay.
you
Awesome.
did, you knocked it out of the park. Um,
Which is a extreme relief. I'm still like, did he really? You're like,
yeah,
yes.
he, because I did, like I said, we're friends, and I did, because I was note taking. I did rewind back when I saw your name in the credits to make sure I saw your name, because like this is very cool in the
That's, by the way,
in the opening credits.
still exciting, and especially in the opening credits to get that honor. I mean, that's also cool.
Yeah, I'm not even. I rewind it back because I was like, I think I missed Barry's name, and like, it was just cool. You see your friends go do something, and like on Shudder, that's awesome.
Yeah. And by the way, thanks Shudder for picking this up,
Yeah,
because
I'd like to buy the one day. Hopefully, there's a Blu-ray out, and I will purchase it.
all right, awesome. I don't
Just because I this will be the first movie because of that I actually have not bought for the show.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's available. But how about I
Yeah,
find you a Blu-ray and I send it to you? I think
thank
that's the
you.
least
Yeah,
that's the
that'd
least I
be
can do.
no worries. Um, So anyway, a couple other fun facts before I think I kind of more get into the plot breakdown that I had heard. The game of Slapface and parts of the story were inspired by Jeremiah's grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
He said, which the older brother Tom was named, shares the name with him, and the three bullies, the girls, were like basically his grandfather's story, and same with the game of Slapface.
Which
Um,
is scary. I mean, scary. I mean, I feel like we all have stories maybe similar to that, maybe not
mhm.
to that extreme, but especially because what a way to go out on a limb and make such a personal story.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
get why he would want this movie made, like want to make this more made. And I know it was a short film beforehand, but it was really just a proof of concept, right?
Yeah. Well, the short film, from what I remember, was that it was the dad and the son,
Okay,
and so it
okay,
wasn't brothers. And film in general, and indie film, it's like, maybe the original script had a dad and son, for the feature, but the producer who came on, or Mike, who was the brother, it made more sense to have him be a brother. Who knows? The
sure,
story can be shaped later on after the
sure.
script.
It really works. I mean, it's a good movie to be proud of. So yeah, just the general concept. They start off playing this game. Not fun. The start of the movie, they start playing Slapface, and
Mhm.
it's him and his brother just slapping each other
Yeah.
back and forth, and it's this whole movie's humorless, but you get the tone immediately. It's
Yeah,
humorless.
and not. I know I'm blabbing, but the only negative comments I see especially before it came out, was Slapface. What a stupid name. And my first thought is, you're gonna know what it is in the first minute of the
Yeah,
film, and it is not. It is.
I
When it
think
comes down to it, it's freaking scary.
I think because if you're just looking at it, you're like, if I'm just looking at the poster, walking on Blockbuster, see it, I'm like, oh, that monster's name is Slapface, and
Yeah,
it's
there's
gonna
a
be some
fable
like,
about it. Yeah.
it's gonna be some like corny clown.
Yep.
I'm just
Yeah.
me using my
Yeah.
imagination. But you can't judge a book on its cover, and I also like, I
Not this
mean,
one.
like, I'm a movie nerd, and so are you. Um, you learn early on, like, names are just names,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh, it's funny the thing Slapface. So it did remind me of I only played it once.
Okay.
I was like 15 or so. My brother, my cousin, and I were at a all-inclusive resort in Mexico, and we needed things to do, and we were drinking because I was a bad kid, and I wasn't. We were in resort, and
Yeah, resort
we were
years.
playing Slap and Chug, where you would
Okay.
chug and slap. We've only ever played it once because it became like, what is this?
I
That's
mean, I
complete.
had rock fights when I was a kid. That's where you just throw rocks at each other,
That
you know.
happened in this movie, and so um, but I do want to answer your question because I only did watch the movie once.
Sure.
Virago, is that a like folk? Is that legit folklore? Or did they make
No,
that up in the
I
movie?
think it's something that Jeremiah made up. Now,
Okay.
don't don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's something like, and cool to create an original
Yeah,
story around it.
because you get these really awesome like intro. You see that word Virago, and there's these like lithograph, like or like line drawings of like the folklore of the town, giving a little background of like kind of what you're gonna see.
Yeah, well, it's almost like it in the sense that, and it they knew about the clown, they knew about it, but they never talked about it. And
Well,
so, is this a similar thing? I mean, the sheriff knew about it. I mean,
yeah,
that's horrifying to know that the sheriff also had the same fable that might be killing people in his town.
yeah, it's a weird. It has the weird feeling of like I'm glad you brought up it because there's definitely that like New England. I think they filmed in upstate New York. It feels like those places. The bar they go to, the town. I've been to those places
Mhm.
just visiting friends or whatnot. Like it's that vibe.
Yeah,
I know the
yeah.
bar they were at. So but yeah, so it starts off actually the kid is looking folklore up at school. That reminded me of myself a lot 'cause I did that a lot as a kid too. Like, oh cool, let's check out every book on urban legends or whatever and
Yeah, and
the
what is
school library.
and it's that fascination of the darkness that, especially kids have, and
Yeah,
why I watched horror movies when I was a kid. It's this fascination.
there's a
Also, a kid
certain
going to
age.
a library, by the way, we should always promote that.
Yes, he was in the library looking it up.
Yeah.
Um but you learn early on his mother had passed. Um and they allude to a car accident. I believe even from the interviews I heard that there's a way to uh, kind of own our own interpretation of what had happened.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that's why when you said there were spoilers, I'm even having watched the movie as many times, I'm like, is there a twist? Or do we just
well,
kind of go along with the horror of it? And,
was
and
the could I ask the question or did I
yeah.
read along? Was the twist that not Jeremiah, that what's their director's name? That Lucas did everything?
See, that's the thing is I don't think there's an I had friends who were like, "Oh, we enjoyed it, but the twist wasn't." And I was like, "Twist? I don't think there's an answer. I just I
So
I I
oh
don't think it
sorry.
I don't I just I don't want to say it doesn't matter because that might, try to simplify everything, but just like
We'll get there.
okay, okay,
I
okay,
will
okay,
get
okay,
there
okay.
because
Hold your-
I do have questions and kind of wondering that because I almost thought it was definite, but
Mm,
um the movie itself we're going through it and especially with your short it's so unnerving.
mhm.
Everything is unnerving. We see them playing Slapface again because Lucas is being in trouble in town and the sheriff who is Hedaya, which the dad from Clueless,
Legend,
and yeah,
legend.
and he look like he's older, So it took me a minute, and his eyebrows aren't as bushy anymore. So it took me a minute to realize who he was.
Yeah.
Or the dad in Night at the Roxbury, or Fertelli's from
It's funny because
Cheers.
those are the two ones that I went to, Clueless and Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah, and then he's Rhea Perlman's husband in Cheers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he had his own show too.
But so serious in this. I mean, he's
just playing a cop.
He's playing a cop. Yeah, and he's very concerned about this kid. Like that's what I love. Yeah.
And that was another thing. It made me go. They mentioned that the dad was troubled. It seemed like, or
Mhm.
rough and tumble. But then also at the same time, I was like, was the father a former police officer? Is this why this kid's getting so much slack?
Oh yeah.
And the gun that they own, and they, but he gets in trouble. Before that, we see a really disturbing scene where there's this abandoned building in there where some of the folklore relies on some of the
And a
town's
place
urban
that
legends.
I would enter in a second as a kid.
Oh,
That would be a dream. I mean, I had
Jersey-
some places, but I would enter into that I'd go there every day.
Jersey, we have Weird New Jersey, and it lists all of the urban legends, and it was a weekly magazine, and they have these big bound books. And one of the places they're all condemned now. You go, we have had a lot of abandoned mental institutions that it was illegal, but you could break into. And in high school, we did. October comes around, and it's like, what weird New Jersey things can we go do? That building reminded me of one of those mental institutions. I don't think it was. I think it was a school. I want to say I think it was a school or something in this movie.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure, but it's exactly the thing. It's like I used to work at this after school program a long time ago in Boston, and the kids came in and were like, "Oh, we got in trouble with our parents." I'm like, "What'd you do this time?" and this was in the city a little bit near Boston, and they were like, "Oh, we broke into this abandoned gas station and and just kind of fooled around, and then my parents caught us and they got mad." And I was so torn because I'm like, okay, I'm working for this after school program. I'm supposed to be mad at you, but in my heart, I'm really proud of you for doing that. Because that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
Is entering. You're not breaking into somebody's house. You're not doing. It's an abandoned place, and you're just exploring.
I jumped on a hospital bed that was propped for people to come in and out of this place. And then years later, it was weird. Actually, the town I ended up living in now, or near here, there's an abandoned. Once again, all these things have been condemned, which really stinks. But there was this school that was abandoned, and but it's in the middle of the woods, and so there's trees all growing through it, and super creepy. Anyway, so that's what it reminded me of. But his name is Lucas, our lead. He cuts his hand. And by the way, the actor he holds the movie so well.
Yeah, and
he's the best actor in this movie.
And I think, I think he was a driver of the movie. I want to say, I don't know his parents' involvement, but it was clear that he got this film made, or he pushed to be in it. Yeah, and of course, we're very excited that he did.
Yeah.
Again, and I just want to reiterate that I was brought on this process very late. I mean, it was already shot.
Oh,
So I don't know the backstory, and I don't really. I haven't met a lot of the folks in person. And again, a lot of that was because pandemic. I would have probably met them 10 times over if I could actually
film
travel.
Festivals, this and that.
So I don't know the story of that, but yes, I guess the bottom line is, thank goodness he pushed to be in this, because he was great.
Keep the Wikipedia right for me to make sure. August Maturo, and he was in I actually never seen The Nun, but he was in The Nun, and then he was a Disney Channel star.
Yeah. That's what I remember. Yeah.
So anyway, he cuts his hand and puts blood on a picture of his mom crying in front of this building. To me, that is what brought on the witch.
I assume the same thing.
Yeah, and then we kind of see him, and we meet his brother. His brother's what's his name? Tom. Am I crazy?
Yep.
Tom and his girlfriend Anna, and I just gotta say, instantly, Jeremiah did a great job of making Anna seem really sweet.
Yeah. And then and then you're not surprised when she says she's a Wiccan. You're like, oh, okay. It wasn't just like, I'm this and now I'm this. It was
Yeah.
like it made sense, you know.
Yeah,
And
like you know, August is no August, Lucas is struggling clearly with Tom, his older brother, and his relationship, but they're close. And the cop does warn very early on. We're still looking at the first like 15 minutes of the movie.
yeah, we could
Warn,
accelerate.
yeah, or warned though, Tom, like, hey man, your brother gets in trouble a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. Like something bad's gonna happen, and like Anna's trying to connect with him, and at the same time but then we go back to Lucas, and he's in the he's like running through the woods, and he's getting rocks thrown at him. These three girls, these two really mean twins, and then Moriah, um, Moriah. I don't. Sorry, it was the only first time I've ever seen the name spelled that way.
Yeah,
So
I think we just flow through
we could just
Mariah.
flow, but
Mariah.
Moriah,
Yep.
who through their three, they call themselves the Nightshades, but they're like, you know, they're like, Lucas, like, why are you stalking my friend? Like, very just mean, and like I said, they throw fucking rocks at him. So like he's bullied, and
she
but
is in a way too, because I just read an article with the actor. Sorry, I should know.
oh,
Let's look that because Annabelle.
Mirabelle Lee,
Mirabelle.
yeah,
That's it. I was gonna say Annabelle. I was like, I know that's not right, but yeah, Mirabelle was, she what she made the point in the article is that she's being kind of bullied too, in the sense that these are her only friends, so she needs to kind of like kiss their
yeah,
butts.
they do a good job of conveying that because they do, you know, you do see the twins just as and stories do that just as bullies. They're nothing. They're not. There's anything redeeming about them. But with Mariah, we do get the redeeming this. She turns back. You know, she stops and she says, "Well, can you join the Nightshades?" That's the name of their little clan. And they're like, "What?" And then they make him go into that building. And this is when we meet. We first get our introduction. Honestly, it feels like there's like a homeless person in there. That's the way like the witch is living in this building, and the witch, we think, attacks Lucas, but he just wakes up outside of the woods, and Mariah's over him.
Yeah, which
And
I've never been able to explain myself. You know,
yeah,
I kind of I need to have to assume there's always an answer is wrong. But like I would be interested in to hear Jeremiah and say why he chose that, because I was like, that doesn't really happen necessarily. Like there's no like transportation element. There's an element of, is the witch there or not, of course.
I just was like, oh, he blacked out, ended up here, and that's kind of it. Like that's the way my brain processes it. But she's like, you're my boy. Like they're middle school relationship.
It's young love. Yeah. Young love.
But she's like, well, it's our secret, which is another I think piece of trauma that you could put in, like, I would say more his cap.
Yeah, well, there's going to be an offshoot scene with a bigger budget or something where they're at school and she ignores him, you know?
Yeah.
Or Mariah ignores him. So there's going to be that part of it that we don't see, where he's like actually feeling neglected by her despite the fact she says she likes him. Like, I feel like that's going to be seen somewhere off camera.
Yeah. And so, like, he got a little pep in his step, but the witch clearly intrigues him now. As much as it can't scare him, he even mentions at dinner, he says, yeah, I met a monster today.
Yeah, so nonchalantly.
Yeah, and like, you know, Tom brushes it off, I think, as any older brother would, especially his brother's like his caretaker, and he's struggling with it, and they allude, like, you know, he's kind of borderlining alcoholism with the amount of like beers he's always drinking.
Yeah, of course, but at the same time he's leaving for work every day too, so he's trying to make it happen. Like he's not, you know,
they have a tough situation. It's a so he's doing that, and then but Anna, as I said, she was sweet. Like she tries to sympathize with him. They talk about the Wiccan part, but then we see, and excuse me if I'm missing anything here, we see Lucas go back almost immediately to that house.
Yeah, to the school, right?
To the school, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the witch is now inviting him because he sees those blue flowers.
Yes, for the blue flower trail.
Yeah, and by the way, I understand. I've seen this movie tenfold because rewatching the scenes. But yes, I think the witch is now Virago is now inviting him. Like, I'm sorry I scared you, but I'm going to invite you. And just to speak this, I feel like this is a very Fight Club scenario where, like, it's almost like the push that Lucas needed to truly have a witch come into his life, a monster come into his
Mm-hmm.
life. You know, where his mom's gone, he's cutting his hand just, you know, to feel or to maybe connect with his mom, his dead mom, and somehow. And so, yeah, it's starting to ramp up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and he has a little totem too.
Mm-hmm,
It's like a little toy soldier, I think. Is that what it was? A little toy
It
sword?
was, and
Okay.
I can't logically tell you how they're connected right now, but I know that appears in
Yes,
in-
and so goes back in, and then the witch follows him to the woods, and this is when actually I talk about your score. I felt your score the most at the certain point when him and the witch are back to back. You get this full view, and I
Mhm.
swear I was like, oh, my first note was I haven't even looked at my notes at all. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, there's a homeless person. Like I
Mm.
didn't realize there'd be a witch.
Mm.
Like going into it, I didn't really know what Slapface would be.
It's funny
And
because because I saw it so quickly and connected. I'm like, I always knew it was a witch, but somebody watching it for the first time, that's
I'm like,
interesting to hear.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's homeless in there, and he was seeing things. I'm just kind of making the movie up in my head, right?
Yeah.
And then
That's good to
really
hear.
we move along quickly, and they're there, and they're like you said, she invites him in, and this one shot of looking over like the lake that they have or the woods hill, and your score is going on, and there's like sort of a moment of peace. Like, cool, there's the two
Mhm.
there's these two friends.
Yeah. Well, by the way, success.
Yeah.
I try to come up with videos on YouTube about explaining different scores that I've written. At least I
Hmm.
try. And I'm actually writing one about this scene because musically, it had to follow that whole thing of him being led to the school, being going into the school or the hospital or whatever we decide, and then the scare, and then the chase, and then that moment where he's being carried off, and of course you're thinking, well, that's bad, but
Yeah.
then we get to the sunset, and my goal as for the score was to turn you around, not to make you feel completely comfortable.
No, I have a
Yeah,
note literally right sandwich
yeah.
between where like it's very unnerving still.
Yes, and Jeremiah and I always talked about that. It always every time it needed to be, even with Mariah at the sweetest moment, the music couldn't reflect that it's
Oh,
comforting.
her. You got a minute, not even maybe of ooh, their scene's nice together when it was a Mariah Lucas scene, and then it completely you were like something happened, and but you know there he so I'm he did give her a kiss. I did skip that part, but
Yeah.
we reveal the monster and the witch, and that scene has happened. And I'm gonna go back to like I feel like just daily life, like he's living his life. He's going to see the witch, and then I think we do get the most upsetting scene of the whole movie. Um, he's being chased in the woods, and there's some noise ruffling, and a dog a beautiful husky is running at him, and the witch swoops in and rips the dog in half. And it's so
Uh-huh.
like I mean, anytime a dog dies, no one likes it, but this was like especially like, oh, like we know the witch is gonna be bad, but like,
Yeah,
oh,
like killing dog bad is real bad.
yeah. And then he reveals so he goes back and oh, sorry, she does heal his wound. That's the first. There's like a motherly. So there's this
Mm.
new mother connection with the witch. We really find out later, but she heals his cut,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
I'm
then
wondering if
she's
that's supernatural healing or is it just like caressing, just to make him feel
oh,
better.
okay. I thought because of like the mud she rubs in on it, but that happens right before the dog death, and he leaves, and the rip of the dog, and she wipes blood on him. And
Mhm.
it's like so you never see the witch, you always see the back of it, and she used the hand, her hands are I know it was a man who played the witch, but as a she's very creepy in the way they keep showing the hands, and she wipes the blood on
And
him.
that, by the way, to speak to that, that's super important. Like you think, oh, stick your hand in there and do this thing, and your shot's done, and it'll be
Hmm.
effective. It's like it's like how miming is an art, where
Yeah,
like you are acting. There's an assumption that it's easy. There's assumption that you're in the makeup, so therefore you're just going to portray that character automatically.
No,
But it's
there's
in the motion, it's in the the
okay.
movement.
I'll take this minute to talk about them.
Yeah.
The motion of the acting and the directing, and from my research, it sounded was very, with your end of Jeremiah and the way he worked, everything was very collaborative, which is such a cool way to work.
Yes.
It's played like an animal. Like the movements of it, it's very like the witch has very animalistic movements. Like
well,
I'm playing with my hands right now, but like the way they had the witch moved and was instructed, it was like an animal foraging for food.
Okay.
Um,
By the way, this
really
is so
neat.
fun to hear your view on it, because I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's just what I was like, because it is different. It's not just like here's a big version of a witch. But
Yes.
For the record, for anyone listening, I'm like moving my hands like Nosferatu. Like,
well, to skip ahead real quick to the very iconic moment of the witch is when Anna pulls up her gun.
So I could move right there.
Okay, let's do that, because I mean, Anna, I kind of wanted to see what Anna could do.
Yeah.
And maybe like me, you're like, oh, can she use her Wiccan powers, but can she relate to the witch on some level? Like, and then of course
get the chance.
doesn't get.
Yeah.
And so there was talk about how, and this is what the producer and star, by the way, Mike Manning, Tom, talks a lot about, is they always did the takes how they should be from the script, and then they the last take, they let the actors do kind of things that they wanted, and that mimicking of the witch doing the gun was
creepy.
like a last minute addition, and you're like, that is a powerful moment. I'm glad they got that.
But some of that makes me think, we were saying is it all in Jeremiah? Makes me think that could have been Jeremiah mimicking.
I will give Jeremiah credit till
not Jeremiah. Sorry, it could have been Lucas mimicking. But then she's not phased. But then my whole thing gets undercut, because
I see where you're going.
Then she's not phased by it being Lucas if it was Lucas.
Yes, and that's where I think there's no clear. That's the beginning. There's no clear cut answer.
You want to give it to, like you said earlier, like Fight Club. Like you go back and watch people, interacting with Brad Pitt and interacting with Edward Norton. It's almost the same. There's no difference, because they're like, hey Tyler, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a vaguity. But yeah, so what happens there, and we really couldn't move to write that scene, is Anna does notice, like, Lucas comes home and he just nonchalantly, I think the weirdest scene of the movie, or like line delivery, he's like, oh, that's just dog's blood.
Yes.
And
that was clear. That is a clear choice on either Jeremiah's part or August's part, where it's, and Tom then backs that up, or he's like, he said it's dog's blood, so then there's no problem.
Yeah. And that's they say, like, the sign of sociopaths or like serial killer, like they kill animals. It's 100% a clear choice. And Anna's so concerned. She's the most concerned. And basically she's like, kind of like, I'm going to keep an eye from a distance on Lucas.
Yeah.
And that scene we just talked about happens, and you do get a really cool part of that scene. You said she pulls up the gun, the witch, because she has her gun out, and we got introduced there is a gun. And the witch is not only a witch, it is like supernatural, because you see these like branch things come up.
And I never had that on the rough cut of the film that I was working with.
Yeah, because
so it wasn't. Now, if the sound people would need to see that, because they might create something for it. But I never saw that. And so when I watched it on, actually it was at CineQuest, which was a film festival up in San Jose. It was virtual. I watched it then. I was like, I even was taken back. I was like, cool audition. Oh, right.
And I think I mentioned this earlier. What that scene does, it's one of the more important scenes of this movie, right? So what it does is you go, oh, I can kind of start looking at the witch. Like, it's so darkly lit. I'm like, what is she really? And then it comes at you, and then it goes. Like, that's what I mean. They hide it. They did such a great job of lighting the monster, where like there's like one long extended scene where we do see it a little more, but now
by the way,
Anna's
Dominic, the DP, director of photography, Dominic and Jeremiah work together all the time, and there was a project after this that was with a different set of producers, but and then so the producers that I was unfamiliar with asked me to work on this upcoming project. And as soon as I saw that I was, first of all, this is Jeremiah, but secondly, that it was Dominic, I'm like, great, it's going to look fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Just like,
it looks beautiful.
And that helps. So like, it just, I mean, the skill, you want the skill to be there with the people that you work with. And so he made this film look probably 10 times the budget, first of all.
It does, this movie does a lot with the little you have, and it shows all through it. I mean, this is right in there with, you could put this right in there with, I think, that new term that this new Scream introduced, like the elevator horror movies, right? That are more about like family dramas and like, I think have more bigger message. I mean, the message of this is anti-bullying and it plays when you sit and we're talking about it. But, so after she dies, like basically Lucas is the first one to be like, "Where's Anna? Have you seen Anna?" And it sounds like Anna's run away quite a bit, like it's a on and again, off again relationship.
Well, there was no relationship. That's the part that is always interesting. It's like she established herself within the family pretty quickly, but it was probably out of a concern of Lucas.
Oh, okay.
And
I didn't pick up on that.
Tom, well, I only say that because Tom doesn't certainly seem like I'm the most stellar guy, you know? And so, you know, if they're fighting already, like she has no responsibility to stay there. But I think,
Tom is his own damaged creature.
Yes, exactly. He needs his own help.
And Tom is like they do he's a drunk. I mean, he's a functioning alcoholic, and he's like, whatever.
Dog's blood, whatever. Dog's blood.
I'm gonna go work, and I'm gonna go. And we do get a nice moment of the Tom and Lucas sharing a beer after he's like, "You have a girlfriend." It's a nice moment as someone with an older brother and bonding over beers. I was like, "That's a nice moment."
Yeah. I tried to give him advice, you know, which was
and but yeah, he so she's missing, and then we get another scene of Mariah and Lucas more on like a date, kind of running around. I still think it's fucking weird that, like, because you know there's something wrong with Lucas, that he's like, yeah, I want to introduce you to the witch, and she wasn't there, and they show this like shot before you could bring him into the. Actually, I really do like that shot of you see the over shoulder of the witch watching him and Mariah play together, and that it was a very like YA, like young adult shot. I felt like
and by the way, I musically I wanted to provide like a sting, you know, like a little quick like, hey, you know, maybe even a little jump scare. And Jeremiah was like, no, we don't need that, just a soft little thing. And I'm like, sure, you know, and that's where, you know, that's why you have a director. That's why you have somebody writes the score, because he was like, no, actually, I don't want that sting there. I want just something subtle. I was like, okay.
Yeah, like I told you, your score is it's the glue. It's one of those movies. Like little side tangent. I know we're running. I mean, there's no time limit. It's my show, but
yeah, we're going long. We're going long. I talk a lot.
Me too. But side tangent. I was watching for the first time since it was like the Titanic the other week. And when I watch movies, I read the IMDb trivia, and like it's just a habit of mine. And
yes, I do the same.
Yeah, and I mean sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. But it mentioned one thing and was like, oh yeah, James Horner just had to like the movie didn't work before his score hit, and then he had to trick James Cameron, not trick him, but be like, this is gonna be the song for the movie, right? When this iconic song, My Heart Will Go On. I was like, that's so neat, because with any movie, the score will change everything. So that scene is a great example of, I don't know if I would remember the scene as much if that was more of a jump scare with
as soon as so one of the reviews of the movie mentioned my music, but it seemed like they only listened to the trailer because they were like, J. Neely's score was industrial and metal, and I'm like,
no, it's strings and ambient.
It was specifically not industrial.
Yeah.
And I understand that the trailer is a different thing. Like,
trailers I didn't watch the trailer.
Yeah, trailers are made by other people.
Yeah.
Like, often, I mean, well, we can go into Suicide Squad, but a
But
trailer
no, the Trailer House made that movie.
made
It's
that
a
movie.
famous story.
And that's the style I don't like, which is I don't want a ton of songs or whatever. Well, that's another day. But I was very insistent that we don't do. It's got to be subtle. It can't be industrial. Now Jeremiah he already knew that,
Mhm.
but it was very important that I expressed that to him because it could be another movie, and
Yeah.
it's not. I don't know if say we did have a lot of school scenes with a ton of people in it, would the score change if it felt like a more open world? Or
So,
is it a small subtle score because it's a small world that we're in?
I
I'm
do have a
curious.
question. This actually
Yeah.
leads great into the next scene because I
Okay.
have a question of well, actually, um, the kid smashes a rat like Charlie Kelly and It's Always
Uh-huh.
Sunny, and she runs away. But I want to go to like a little later because
Okay.
um and the brother's really proud of the rat. Like it's one of the weirder dynamics of that movie because they
There is,
seem to.
by the way, there's two kinds of people. There's people who think killing mice and rats is okay,
It's
like
the way
smashing with
he
it.
kills the rat
Maybe it's the way
because
that
the
we should be.
blood gets on his face and he's like into it and like. But
They've
it's the
done it
most like
before. They've done it
it's
before. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's the most oddly enough that one scene is the most like it sounds weird to say like normal him and his brother seem at the time like it's the
Mhm.
least tension.
Yeah, but then Mariah, I
Oh,
feel like
Mariah's like I
has
can get the fuck out of
yeah,
here. I'm
she has
breaking
the
up with you.
reaction that I would have as
I
well.
would have too.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I
yeah,
said,
yeah.
it reminded me of It's Always Sunny just because the Rat King Charlie
Okay.
uh
No, but that's by the way,
smashing.
that is a good point though about it being a Tom and Lucas moment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and he's proud of his
yeah,
younger brother.
it but a little further later, scene wise, and this is a score question I do want to ask because it is the score that it's so different from the rest of the movie. I did take more note of it. Is the montage of him destroying the house with the witch.
Okay, okay.
So Lucas and the witch, he brings them to the house and they get in the bath together. Like I said, the witch becomes like his mother.
Yeah, and
They
that
get in the
bath scene
oh,
so fun to score because I was like, I need to make this feel even more uncomfortable,
it's
so I
so
need to work hard to
uncomfortable.
make it more uncomfortable because it's already.
It's and then the bat scene, and then they give like a hug moment where he's putting the robe back onto her.
Uh,
Um, and then they trash the house.
yeah.
And
Eh,
the montage of the trash in the house was, um, I do think the score of it was the most different sounding of everything in the
yes.
movie, and it seemed not out of place, but it had like a different energy to the rest of the everything else you'll see from beginning to end.
And absolutely, and I will say it, I'll explain it this way. A lot of modern day movies tend to have a lot of songs in them.
Hmm.
And I'm not against that, but I think it takes you out of the film. So when I watched the rough cut of the movie, they had a song in there, and so I wouldn't copy it. I'd never listened to that song, but I knew
Hmm.
they had a song, so I never scored that scene
Oh, okay.
initially. So then it wasn't until later, even the ending, by the way, they were going to have a song playing over the ending of Lucas, and then it would
Okay.
flow into the
Because
credits.
that song plays in the credits.
It plays the credits, but originally, and I don't know, I know it was a different song, but it was probably temporary. But so I guess there's two places where I didn't score them because I was like, oh, well, they're having a song in there.
Hmm.
So this one was the single of the score where I think because we don't have any other songs in the movie except for at the bar, it was okay for
Oh,
me
yeah,
to
it's like
write
background.
something a little bit different. It's
Yeah.
not your typical scene. It does have thematic and instrumental elements of the rest of the score in that
Mhm.
scene, but you're right. It sounds a lot different than everything
And
else.
it's not like it works still very well within the movie. It's just we get taken out. I'm like, oh, things are going on, but this kid's having fun with the witch.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was
Well,
when my brain really thought that one scene was when the first time I was like, oh, this kid's this, and that's one interpretation. Like this kid's the witch.
okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's when I was like, now he's just trashing his house, and like that's just his imaginary friend. But as we said, the witch is probably real because of the Anna scene.
Yeah, which I'm never going to agree one way or the other.
Yeah,
If
you
the
don't
witch
have
is real
to.
or not. Because
You don't have to, and that's not the
because
point.
musically I couldn't make that choice. Musically I couldn't say this thing and this is sorry, I'm not promoting my next YouTube video because whatever, 100 people are gonna watch it, maybe. But it's like I never made a lot of choices. I never had theme for this person, theme for this person. So
Yeah.
therefore, and you give it away, you might give some of the story away. I mean, I remember
Well, Star Wars.
the Rise of Skywalker came out, but the soundtrack was leaked before,
Yeah.
and people could tell what was going to happen in the story based upon the track names. So, what's my point? My point is there's not a ton of indicators of what if the witch is real or not, and I
No,
never
and
wanted to
it's
make that choice.
I
Yeah,
like now
yeah,
we've spent the last 45 minutes talking about it, hour or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
I like that of it because
Yeah.
there is a vague, and the point of the movie isn't for us to sit there and be like, was the witch real? Was the witch real? Was the witch not real? I like to call that what the same gripes like people had with like Gone Girl.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I came out of the movie and to this day, if I'm like, the ending that people were so upset that it didn't happen the way they wanted, that wasn't the point of that movie.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and the point of this movie is I don't think not, and you could ask your mom, but it's not for us to sit here and argue if it was real or not real or she was. But that was the first indicator that I thought maybe that's the
Maybe.
But then one scene, like I said, no, it's cool. The score is different and it makes sense, and it has it brings a little more of the fairy tale-ness to it of that scene.
Mm.
And
And
it's
we
shot.
I think we need a break too.
Yeah, it's shot a little different. It's a little
Yeah.
more handheld.
Yeah.
A little more close up. So very good stuff. And then but with is that the scene that there's trashing, and then I have a note in here. It's the weirdest version of ET I've ever seen because he's like hide in the closet, hide in the closet. And on Flyover we just watched the worst version of ET Mac and me. But no,
Which I don't know if I've seen all the way through, but
it's terrible. Watch that episode, but it's terrible.
yeah.
But he hides the kid in he hides the witch in the closet when Tom comes home, and Tom very rightly is just like, dude, this is our fucking house. We live here. Like, why are you trashing the place? And then the witch is gone, and that kind of is what happens in that scene. Like nothing. Oh no, sorry, not that. They start playing Slapface very seriously again. He's like, we're gonna play fucking Slapface, and
well, yeah, because instead of having the tools how to discipline him, he just goes direct to Slapface. He's like, oh, well, this is how you cure this situation.
Yeah, he's like, well, that's your punishment, and they start playing it's harder and harder, and the witch is coming towards Tom as they're slapping, and the kid's like, no, 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 and you do see it's really great, like visual and thematically of the slap and the head turn of the witch when it happens. So the slap is happening to the witch and to Lucas at the same time.
So you might directly connect them.
Yeah. But before the witch could get her hands onto Tom, Lucas hugs him and he's like, I love you, and the witch backs off. Then we get little trash montage. Then we're really into I feel like the ending of the movie where Lucas does follow the trail of flowers again and he finds Anna's dead body, but before he could even go tell anyone about it, the three girls find him again.
Yeah, because you're right. It's a ramp up to the end. Like even starting from there.
Yeah, that's where the third act starts.
Yeah.
He finds Anna, and before he get there, the three girls come to find him because they're like, wow, you've been stalking my friend even more and more. But the kid hears now, and they're always in the woods. He hears now I'm gonna call her Slapface, but it's not Slapface, it's the witch.
Yeah.
The witch is rumbling around. He's like, you gotta get out of here. And in order to save them, he thinks, he just fucking socks that one girl in the face. But before that even happens, the two twins hold him down, and Mariah, who's just also confused and doesn't know what to do, she spits on him.
She was influenced by them, just going along with the crowd.
Yeah, and she clearly struggles with that, but Lucas knows what's coming. So he just gives this girl a broken nose, basically, hits her, runs away, and then Mariah meets up with him in the woods while he's kind of hiding, and not meets up with him. He is like
She's looking
walking
for him.
around. She's looking for him. She's alone. Who's there? But the witch, and she takes a fucking rock and puts her in a coma. Just hits her out, and the girls find Lucas over Mariah's body.
And assume what we'd all assume.
Yeah, he was just standing there like, no. And then we cut, and he's in the jail. He's in the interrogation room. Tom doesn't know what to do, and now we're in the prison cell and cutting back to the hospital.
Yes.
And
by the way, I do want to say,
yeah,
the police do not have a right to question a young child.
No.
Without a guardian present. So actually, and I'm always saying this because it works for the movie. We get it for the movie, whatever. But like in the real world situation, Tom would actually be legally required to be in that room with the sheriff.
He couldn't run away to the hospital and But Tom's
just in case anybody gets in that situation, your legal rights are your guardian. If you're under 18, your guardian needs to be in the room with you.
Mm-hmm. You're. I didn't even think of it. You're absolutely right.
I just want to clarify. Yeah, again, future proofing anybody else.
Sure. And this is about where I wrote the movie is bleak. I have that like 3 times in my notes.
Well, like a child dies.
A child dies, and she's in, and she was a good character too. I know that doesn't matter if a child dies, but like it helped with the story that you do sympathize in, like Mariah.
And the parents, even like the mom's reaction.
Oh, it's devastating.
She's not even on screen for that long, and you're like, you feel it. You feel that reaction.
Yeah, Lucas is getting interrogated. Yeah. Tom's at the hospital, but they kick Tom out of the hospital, and as he's getting kicked out, they're like, the other cops like, fuck you, guy, and wait, we actually have to go back. There's a devastation at the police station, and it's like lit and looks like, and I don't mean to play light of it. It's like the scene in Rogue One of when Vader shows up. There's just like dead bodies.
I will take that comparison.
It's like dark and it's moody and there's the light and like dead bodies everywhere. And Lucas is in the interrogation room while this happens, and he's like, oh, fuck. And he runs home. And I guess Tom just alludes that he's home. And Tom goes home. And this is when you get the confrontation between Tom and Lucas. And, Tom, to his credit, and then, by the way, I didn't know Mike Manning was a producer on the film. It says it right here in Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing double duty on the movie. It's impressive, yeah.
Yeah. So he's just like, he's scared for his brother, and like, what is going on? He's pleading, and then
and I wonder, because we assume he gets killed. I know I just leaped right to the end, but like, why did the witch not kill him in the previous scene? And why did he kill him now? Did we need to go through Mariah's death to get him to the point where is he so defensive of himself, knowing he killed everybody in the police station, that the witch now has to get rid of Tom because Tom's gonna tell everybody, or where's the difference?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think he said I think that's where we're able to vaguely go back. Like maybe it was Lucas. Yeah. Remember, Mariah didn't die. Because remember, Mariah was seen playing with Lucas, and the witch was protective of every person who came in contact with Lucas, positive or not.
Okay. Yeah.
And then jump to the end. Mariah dies after she spits on Lucas, actually showing him an act of violence. And then, and then we propel...
That she was, for the record of the character, that she was reluctant to do, or possibly forced to do by the president. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because I realized that we are talking about, when I'm scoring the movie, I have a job to do.
Yeah.
But I don't often sit back and get to like absorb the whole movie. So I'm like, it's almost like, oh yeah, a child dies here. Oh yeah, a dog dies here. I got to write the music to it. And now I'm like, oh my God, these are huge things.
Yeah.
And I know horror movies can kind of brush off murders here and there, but like
No, this one
these are serious.
they all have they're all poignant and they're serious.
Yes. Yeah. They're
You're not. I'm not watching a new Scream or a slasher where like I want to see deaths.
yeah. It's the
Uh,
fun of the movie is to see the
yeah.
deaths, and because
Or
they're usually not children or dogs.
yes, this is like no, it's gonna happen and it's poignant and
Mhm.
in this ending scene. So that's where I said like I think it was just like Tom's aggression and time. Because I mean, I would probably act the same. What I mean, like what did you do? That was what is going on? I don't remember the exact dialogue, but he's like, what the fuck did you do?
Yeah.
And Luke's like, no, and he sees Slap. I keep calling her Slapface because I think at one point they call her Slapface. I feel like, but it's the witch.
Yeah.
The witch comes in and
It's a Frankenstein situation.
yeah, then
It's not Frankenstein's monster. We just call the monster Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
But now we call her Slapface. Yeah.
And then she comes in and they start playing a game of Slapface. The witch
Yes,
and
Tom.
And Tom, once again, that also could allude that maybe it is Lucas and Tom playing Slapface.
But Lucas, and this is where Lucas suggests to Tom that he needs to play Slapface, assumingly in order to survive.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. You mean it's a really heavy scene where I kind of even glossed over that line.
I have never voiced that, so I'm just saying we are talking about this movie that I have seen parts of 100 times, but like I didn't even think about diving that much. Yeah,
you score in parts, right? You get this.
I score in parts, and yes, you want to connect things thematically, but it would be arrogant of me to say that I knew exactly what I was doing every second of the thing, And also, like, what are you going to go from one theme to another in 2 seconds? There's only so many things you can do.
So they're slapping they're slapping the bass, they're slapping the face, and Lucas, though, is scared and he fires off like the remaining rounds of the gun, their dad's gun, which seemingly clips, goes through Slapface, but goes through the witch, but also clearly hits Lucas, clearly hits Tom, and and Tom is like, "What did you do?" And he stabs the witch. Sorry, for me, it's the point where the witch is at the house before Tom arrives, and there's a scene with like army men.
Yes.
Different colored army men and the totem. Yep. And basically he's using, and it's the first time it's introduced, he's using it like communicate, like right. If you go right with the totem, did you do it? If you go left with the totem, didn't you do it? I just want to add that in because it is a little like precursor to what we're about to see.
Yeah, and that's where I want to say musically, I did have a totem sound. I don't think I really played it because it was so insignificant. And again, I don't think the totem played I could be mistaken. The totem played I don't think it played a huge part.
I watched the movie here, and I have a sound bar in this room. Should watch it again in I have my living room in a 5.1 surround sound, and I'll hear your score a bit better. Fully experienced the actual breaking up of it. But that happens, and Tom. Now we're at the end, and Lucas stabs the witch. Tom's dead. He's crying over his body. The witch is seemingly dead, but by the time the cops get there, the body's gone. And we just end with, actually, because it's to the right of me, the poster that's on Wikipedia, which says coming soon. Yeah. A bloody Lucas's face, and he's crying, and you see the tears scroll down, goes to black, and then we get a very powerful message just about bullying and
which I hadn't seen before. I saw it on Shudder, actually.
Yeah,
even the festival.
I think it gives a nice period to the end of the movie and an explanation of what we've just seen.
Yeah, because and this is not a horror movies often deal with serious issues and they don't get taken seriously because they're horror movies.
Yeah.
So it's good that they address that, hey guys, this is actually, there's a lot of serious issues that have been brought up in this movie.
Yeah. Or you could have I'm just thinking of it recently, or you'd have like something really not well, this movie was all poignantly meant seriously in the anti-bullying message, and it's all very in there. There's a reason why the twins are so brutal
Mm-hmm.
to two characters. Um, but it's something like horror movies, and there shouldn't always be disclaimers to anything. But it's like any Rob Zombie movie, there's going to be some unnecessary like sexual assault, rape types horror in it. And movies like that maybe should have a message at the end of it, but they're put in those movies more because, like, now I'm just talking shit kind of on Rob Zombie because I think he thinks they're like edgy, and that's
Yeah.
not what we have here.
Now, the only thing I'll do to defend him is that if it's about children, you need to have a message. If
Yes,
it's
this
about
is about
adults, there's not a gray area. There's not a gray area dealing with the actual topic, but there's a gray area whether or not he needs to put that in the back of this film. But wouldn't it be nice?
Yes, that's my point. Wouldn't it be
Yeah,
nice?
wouldn't it be
I'm not
nice?
going to sit here and go, oh, but you see that every now and then in horror where, especially becomes like violence of women or children, like you don't get that message at the end. So I like that, and the song plays, and yeah, that is Slapface.
Which I'm glad to talk about because I haven't had the chance to talk about it in depth. So this is really nice. I talked about myself in interviews, but not like about the film.
Well, I'm glad you came on to talk about the movie itself and sit down and break it down because I'm sure not many people do sit down and just talk uninterrupted like this about a movie they were involved in. So I'm happy you're able to do that.
And honestly, I mean, yes, Jeremiah and I talked about the movie, but what would be great is that we have this conversation before I start scoring. Well, because and that's just, by the way, that's just a message to anybody who does film scoring out there is I can read a script and like get it, but like until the director starts talking about it, I don't really feel it. And
Sure.
so, and I know to bring up the big guy, Hans Zimmer, he does that a lot where he asks the director to explain the story to him, not to read the story in a script.
I understand that.
Yeah, and because it's about emotion and feel, and the director knows that or at least should know that better than anybody.
I work in the medical field, and doctor, you'll get on the phone with doctors, and they'll start talking very technical and what things are about, and and I'll say, you just explain to me what you're trying to accomplish with this, this cell structure,
Yeah.
the techno term. It's like I need to see it in shapes.
Okay.
And I use the word rhythm a lot too, and rhythm.
Yeah.
Of whatever we're doing. So I totally get that, where it's like sometimes it's better not to know in detail because you'll be overthinking things.
Yeah, and it's because you're translating their ideas. You're not directly representing them. Trying to.
Now, did you only Oh, I just saw this. A lot of real life members of the town they filmed in appear in this movie.
Yeah, I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, just it caught my eye.
Well, speaking of real people, let me call out that I have a violinist, Chrissy J, that I always play with. She played with, because of pandemic, we couldn't really bring anybody in, and she just kind of came up with some. I gave her the sheet music that was very bare, and she kind of interpreted it. She gave me a bunch of ways to interpret the lines, which was fantastic because I just started putting them everywhere. Zara Fuzzle, who's actually my partner, she did some voices on it. So like I always bring in live people when I can.
Cool.
But this was a low budget movie that I scored at the beginning of the pandemic. So I try to bring in live musicians when I can, but it was me playing a lot of the live stuff and then figuring out ways around. But I wanted to give a shout out to those people.
Yeah, definitely. Anything anything else you want to add to the movie itself?
Not. I mean,
that we didn't cover.
No, because I've emphasized this all over the places. It was such a great experience on this film.
Did you? And my only other question is, did you? Were there any like influence of other like film scores in here at all?
It's funny. I said that in an interview that I did listen to a lot of film scores, and the director Jeremiah later on was like, "Did you?" I'm like, "No, not really." And he was like, "Okay, good." And so I mean, well, the only thing I did reference was The Witch. That was a score because the reason I
scored.
It's barely scored. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And so traditional instruments, barely scored, takes place in the woods.
It's a good reference point.
It's a good reference point. Yeah, so I had to kind of, but then you worry, you don't want to mimic anything. So I don't think I did. Yeah.
The dog death was more traumatic than the baby mashing.
Oh God! How about the crow pecking? Oh,
ooh, on the nipples.
Yeah, that was a twinge too far. Sorry to do that. But
no.
That was almost a little too far. That
makes sense. I did, not maybe because of the score, but I did think of the witch during this movie too. I mean, Witch in the Woods. Anyone's gonna think of the witch. But yeah, no, Barry. Unless you have anything else you want to add to the movie,
I think everybody's bored by what I'm saying at this point.
No, this is super interesting, and thank you so much for joining to rent. Where can the people find you?
So I am always at Barry J Neely. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and I always say I'm going to revive my TikTok account one of these days, but at Barry J Neely.
Yeah.
Same with the website. So I love when people have questions. So if people need to find me, Twitter is probably the best place to find me, but reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Perfect. Once again, thank you so much for coming on. And you guys know you could always find me here on the Flyover State of Film YouTube channel and wherever you find podcasts. Stay frightful, everyone. Welcome to Flyover State of Fear.